Good afternoon. My name is Matt Robbie, and on behalf of Christian Brothers Services, I would like to welcome you back to our Spring 2019 webinar series. Today's webinar is the 9th webinar in our series and is entitled Cybersecurity Awareness 101. This presentation will cover the main components of an overall cybersecurity program. As always, before we get started, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Please note, audio will stream through your computer, so please make sure your speaker volume is up at an audible level and your flash player is enabled. A copy of today's presentation can be found by clicking on the light green icon with a piece of paper on it at the bottom of your screen. You'll then be able to download today's presentation. We will be using a lecture format today. Our presenter will answer your questions at the end of the presentation, time permitting. However, at any time during the webinar, you can type your questions into the question box, which can be found to the left side of the presentation window screen. If your question box is not already opened, you can open it by clicking on the purple Q&A icon at the bottom of the page. Just type your question in the box and hit submit. We will answer all questions time permitting. At the end of the presentation, please take a moment to let us know your thoughts about today's webinar and speaker. On the right-hand side of your screen is a brief 5-question survey. By completing the survey, you are not only providing us and the presenter with valuable feedback on today's webinar, but you'll also be given the opportunity to enter a drawing for a $100 gift card at the end of the webinar series. Now, before we get started, let us remember we are in the holy presence of God. Creator God, through your world and the people that surround us, we pray that we may grow more aware this day of your life-giving presence. Open our minds and our hearts to apply the knowledge from today's webinar for the good of all. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. Let me introduce our presenter, Tom Drez. Tom is the Managing Director of Christian Brothers Services Information and Technology Division. He is also the Chief Information Officer, Chief Privacy Officer, and Chief Security Officer for Christian Brothers Services. As a leader of the Information and Technology Service Division for the last 31 years, his responsibility has been to manage the portfolio of business and technology initiatives across all business units and all systems to continually improve services, efficiency, and effectiveness. In addition, he is responsible for the information protection, including privacy and security for the entire organization. Joining Tom today is Christian Brothers Services Education and Proficiency Manager, Lisa Matlock. Please welcome our presenter today, Tom Drez.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate the introduction. And welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate you making time to join us this afternoon to talk about this very important topic. For those of you who have joined my webinars in the past, you've seen this disclaimer screen. Just a reminder, I'm basically an IT guy. I am not a lawyer, but the lawyers do rub off on me. So sometimes I may talk like one, but remember, I'm an IT guy. I'm going to give you all kinds of information. I'm glad to share our experiences with you, but of course, it's not a substitute for your own prudent business practices and due diligence. All right, so Matt mentioned a little bit about me, and in fact, on Sunday, it'll be my 32nd anniversary here at Christian Brothers Services. My, how things have changed over those 32 years. In fact, if you go back to that time, there really was no such thing, right, as a chief privacy officer or a chief security officer or even a CIO. It's really the internet and that pair of copper wires that come into all of our buildings and our organizations. That's really what's changed everything, and that's why we're all here today to talk about how we can protect ourselves. So we're going to skip my resume slide here and move on to this one. You've seen this slide before if you've been on my presentations or any of my speaking gigs. I invite you to connect to me on LinkedIn if we are not already connected. There is my URL. That way we can carry on the conversation all year long and not only during webinars. And then also, following this presentation, I'm going to invite you via email to an online community that we've been building of all of our IT webinar attendees over the last couple of years. Again, it's a place where you could post questions, or CBS, we could post content and push it out to everybody once in a while. It's just another means for us to carry on our conversation all year long and not just during the fall and spring webinar series. So here it is. This is a destination check. This is why we're all here. I think we are here because we want to keep our organizations out of the headlines and out of the crosshairs of those that might wish to do us harm or ill will. So today we're going to be talking about, we're going to try to follow this logically, all the way to a security awareness program, which, of course, comes out of a cybersecurity program overall. So we're going to try to follow this logically, but we're going to spend most of our time talking about security awareness-related topics. So why is cybersecurity so important to all of us? Well, here you have a couple of quotes. There's one from last summer, Cybersecurity Tops Directors and Officers Liability Risks. I think that's also what's helped push our crowd up for attending this webinar today, is because your cybersecurity practices, or maybe in some cases, lack of practices, may be popping up on some management reports, audit reports, or even insurance carrier reports as you renew things like commercial and general liability policies. So we're going to arm you with a lot of information today that may help you stay on track in all those different areas. On this slide, this is brand new. I just added the slide yesterday, and Verizon just happened to release their 2019 Data Breach Investigations Report yesterday. This is a very important industry report released every year. So even though this is called the 2019 report, it's really based on all of Verizon's experiences. Actually, I should say all of their customers' experiences during 2018. As you might imagine, Verizon is a huge carrier. So what they do is they collect data and statistics about data breaches or reported or suspected data breaches with their customers being their case study data set. So we're not going to go into what this report really is or what it's saying about 2018, but I do recommend that you go out and Google this report and find it. So it is the Verizon 2019 Data Breach Investigations Report, or we affectionately call it the DBIR. Either way, you're going to be able to Google it, and it should pop up right at the very top of your screen. There is one, I found this one paragraph on the bottom half of this screen from Security Week where they kind of summed it up. I mean, it's a giant report. There's all kinds of data in there by all kinds of industries, but I like this. It says, this is the 12th edition since 2008 and the most extensive to date. 73 contributors, and what they are chronicling here, or in aggregate, is 41,686 security incidents, including 2,013 of those that turned out to be confirmed data breaches, where that data made itself out into the public domain or the dark web. A breach is defined as an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure or exposure of data. Of course, now, if that's 2013 confirmed, and we know most organizations don't always report security incidents and data breaches. So if that's what we can count, I'm pretty sure that we can count on that number being a whole lot higher than it is. And again, that's another reason all of us are here today, because we're trying to do everything that we can to keep our organizations out of the headlines. If you needed some more stats to see why we're all here this afternoon, here's some big numbers for you. 1 in 3,207. That's the rate of phishing emails in 2018, according to Symantec. And here below that, 20,373 complaints to the FBI Internet Crime Complaint Center. And their acronym, they are known as IC3. If you ever come across statistics, and there might be some more in this presentation, anytime you see IC3, that is the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. They collect good statistics as well as all of our carriers do. And one more, $2.5 million is the amount of the largest insurance claim related to business email compromise, also known as phishing scams, that results in money being stolen from an organization's bank account. So the cost of internet crime, I don't think it's any surprise to you. If we look on the right-hand side, it's been growing year over year, and in 2018, almost doubled 2017. So we're also here because prosecutors are indeed taking notice of what is happening out there, and they are starting to hold organizations accountable. There are many laws on the books for Christian Brother Services, and maybe even your own organization, that have teeth in them and provide for a private right of action, as well as the government or any state, local, or federal government coming after us. So prosecutors are taking notice, and the last thing we want to do is put anything on a radar screen that 50 states' attorney generals might want to look at and investigate. On the right-hand side, this is something new. It's called irregular checkups. A best practice in any cybersecurity program is to vet and monitor the security habits of business partners. I know for some of us that may be way out there. Right now we're just worried about what we can do for ourselves, but I added this here because certainly we definitely have to do everything that we can do to mitigate risk to help our own organization, but it's just a stepping stone. It's not enough for us just to help our own organizations. We have to look at all of those vendors and service providers that we work with, that we may send data to, and we need to make sure that their supply chain essentially is up to snuff as well. So this is a set of octopus tentacles. Certainly do what you need to do for your organization, but only view this as step one. We may be back here in a fall webinar series talking about what you did to help your own organization and what you're also doing to look at all the vendors that may have access to your data. All right, this is the IT DNA slide. This is in every single presentation that I make, so you've seen this before. So that means every IT-related topic that we might discuss at any time should fall somewhere on this chart. So what does it mean to run IT like a business? You could see the 5 drivers here, but today we're specifically talking about point number 3. So it's the same exact slide, and we're doing everything we can to manage risks. That means doing everything we can to improve risk management, improve our security posture, and things along those lines. So this is the chart. Everything that you do in an IT organization within any company, this is it. So we're going to move on. All right, so what is risk? A probability of threat or damage, injury, liability, loss, or any other negative occurrence that is caused by external or internal vulnerabilities and that may be avoided through preemptive action. So that's according to businessdictionary.com and Wikipedia, of course, the Internet's source of all information. Risk is the potential of gaining or losing something of value. So again, I'm trying to start here with a high-level view on how we get from an IT organization within an organization all the way down to what we want to talk about today, because it all flows. If you recall from any of my past presentations, remember we say there are no such things as technology projects for technology's sake. Everything is business and technology related. Even if we run a wire from a central wiring room to a desk, we're running that wire for a reason. Maybe we've hired a new employee to process more business or whatever the case might be. The same thing in an organization at the high level. We need to spend our resources, time and money wisely, and sure there's a variety of risks to all of our businesses, but we have to pick and choose and prioritize. But it all starts with risk. That's what's going to help us. So risk equals, if you want to reduce this down to math, risk equals the likelihood of an event occurring multiplied by the potential impact of the event. And then each of us, all of us, we have to decide when a risk is deemed acceptable and when it's unacceptable. And that's going to be different for all of our organizations, right? And I think it's important to know that we cannot eliminate all risk, and we must take steps to mitigate high unacceptable risks by undertaking reasonable, appropriate, and prudent action. Now, some of those words are words that I get from various regulations that we have to comply with here at CBS, but anytime we talk about mitigating risk, anytime we mention reasonable, appropriate, and prudent, that's good. All right, so types of risk. Again, we're zeroing in on where we're going to spend the bulk of our presentation today. Sure, we know about financial, environmental, and compliance, but we're here today specifically because of cybersecurity risk, which is anything that may cause damage to the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of your data. And that is a term. That's an industry term. We'll call that CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data. And if you're like us at CBS, we're really concerned about anything to do with what we call CPI data. That's confidentiality, confidential, proprietary, or individually identifiable data. So if you needed some more acronyms today, we're worried about the CIA of the CPI. So why is understanding risk important? I think we've already covered some of these points, but understanding our risks allows us to take the appropriate action to minimize the loss. We demonstrate our due diligence around protecting that information to auditors or other third parties that may come in here and ask us questions. It helps us comply with legal and regulatory. And, of course, at the end of the day, we have to do everything we can to protect our reputation and protect our business. So think about, here we are, that's on the bottom left is CPI. Think about, just for a second, all the various types of CPI that you have in your organization. Sometimes you might think, well, we don't have that much. But if you really think about it, you might say, oh, yeah, but we do have this, and then we have this. So first think about what you have that you want to protect. And then think about what are your main concerns from these risks. And I already mentioned some of these. Business loss or disruption, that would be bad. Reputational harm, that would be bad. If the data, if you actually do lose CPI data and the bad actor has it, they could use a couple of pieces of information like a social security number and a birth date to open up a bank account, to then maybe get a car loan and so on. And then there's identity theft involved, and if somebody does have their identities stolen, well, that could result in lawsuits and then defense and all kinds of things. So we all do have cyber risk exposures. So looking at creating an IT risk management program, overall, I break an IT risk management program down into these three areas. First, we have to do everything we can to protect information, systems, applications, and prevent problems and incidents. So I kind of lump that all together, and I think any organization is going to go through these in a logical manner from start to finish. Everybody for the last X number of years has been focused on protection and prevention. Then when bad things really start to happen to organizations and everybody takes notice, well, that's why we're all here today and have such a big crowd online. And you have to logically, follow through this from protection and prevention, and you're moving into a phase where, okay, you have to be able to, you realize bad things will happen, so you have to be able to detect when those bad things happen and then be able to analyze them. And then you'll need to be able to respond to that incident and fix it and remediate it. I think all of our organizations, we just have to get used to the fact that we need to bake processes in to deal with these bad incidents just as a matter of course of business. So, and then once you go through this process once, I won't say it gets any easier, but bad things happen. All you got to do is be able to respond, remediate, move on, and repeat. And I know I say there's two types of organizations in this world, those that have had a data breach and those that don't know they've had a data breach yet. So this type of risk management program can benefit any organization. All right. So creating a cybersecurity program to protect your digital assets. Remember, we're just flowing through this all logically, and if you're going to create a cybersecurity program, it should include at least these four things. First of all, you have to set a policy, and you set standards, you set procedures, and you educate your employees on those. Planning for where we want to be, not necessarily for where we are. This is a slide, I probably used that graphic over and over for the last 32 years. So when we look at setting a policy, right, what's a policy? A policy is just a statement of management's intent that demonstrates an organization's intention to protect information, in this particular policy's case, and it establishes the expectations for behavior that protects systems and information. Right? We're specifically talking about all of our employees and all of our organizations. And of course, we all know that HR or any auditor would tell you if you have a policy and you don't enforce it, well, then you really don't have a policy. Having a security policy is ineffective unless it is in existence and is enforced. So what might cybersecurity standards look like. And this is I just picked a few things really at random here for you. You're going to make a list of standards that any organization might apply. We could probably go on and on and on. But I just wanted to give you a flavor or give you some example. I know we've got organizations of all types and all sizes on the call today. So some of you may be doing all of these. Some of you may be doing some of these. Some of you may not be doing any of them yet. And you might leave with some of this as a checklist. So this is just some examples. But think about it in terms of standards. Just simple statements. All computers must require passwords. Password requirements should be 12 characters plus a number and a symbol or a special character. By January of 2020, this is a good one, Microsoft Windows 10 should be required. Microsoft is ending support for version, I think, Windows 7, so you should really plan to get to Windows 10 by January. Not only does Microsoft Windows newer versions offer new features, but the security is that much better and tighter and gives an organization more control from a centralized type of fashion. So I definitely recommend that you get to Windows 10 by January, if at all possible. Also, I always hear a lot of gasps when I say this one: no wireless access points older than 5 years old. Now, in this particular case of a device, remember, device has software embedded in it, and it's not something that may be easily updated like Windows 10 or any version of Windows that gets updates on a regular basis. So if you've got older access points in your organization, I might even say 3+ years old, but that really gets a gasp. Take an inventory in your organization and see what you've got out there. Devices that are 5 years and older that are still in service providing Wi-Fi are probably highly, we'll say, accessible to those you don't want to be able to access it. All mobile devices must be encrypted. That's a nice standard. Patch all hardware and software regularly with software patches when the vendor puts them out. And resolve all high vulnerabilities that you find within your organization within 30 days. In fact, I think the federal government just published a new standard. The Department of Homeland Security came out last week and said, you know what, 30 days is way too long. They just changed their federal guideline to be 15 days. All right, so with a policy behind us, now we think about procedures. Again, this is certainly not a comprehensive list, but just to get you to think about some cybersecurity procedures that may lead to others within your organization. Everybody should lock their computer when they're away from their desk. Press Control, Alternate, Delete, so it goes back to the login screen. Whether you're at a desk in a workstation or a desk in a private office, when you're away from your computer, anybody who sits down at your computer can be you. Not a good thing. Another good procedure: send all email that includes CPI data securely. Don't send email with Social Security numbers in clear text through an email, through a regular internet email. Don't leave CPI lying unattended. Things as simple as implementing a clean desk policy within an organization so CPI is just not lying in piles on people's desks. All right, so that's procedures. So now when we think about educating employees, we're talking about teaching our employees about those policies, standards, and procedures. Specifically, there's a term for that these days, and that's creating and maintaining a cybersecurity awareness program. So now you can see we've connected all the dots from risk management all the way down now to creating our own tailored cybersecurity awareness program to our organization. And just as promised in the description for this webinar, this is a blueprint for you, so I put a nice little picture of a blueprint here. So we are in the blueprint phase of the webinar. And security training, when you're talking to all of your employees, it starts with each person. We already know it's the chain, right? Don't be the weakest link. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility within an organization, not just the IT people. So when you think about goals, what do you want your goals of your cybersecurity awareness program to be? For us, and I would imagine it's the same for you, this is all about creating awareness, but then moving from awareness to actual behavioral change. Practicing safe computing among employees is not second nature as of yet. It's not like breathing. We all have learned how to use computers for up to 10 Windows versions these days, not counting our DOS days if you've been around that long. But people are just not used to practicing safe computing all day, every day, without having to think about it. So not only do we want to make our employees aware of what is happening out in the world that is bad, that we don't want to happen to us, we want to stay in front of them enough to create good habits and eventually change their behavior so that they're not thinking about it in the future. It'll eventually come. Eventually we reach a tipping point, and but it may be a generation after us, after we're gone, or 2 generations before it becomes second nature. But I think the goal of your program, this is not a one-hit, one-and-done type of thing. We're working to move from awareness to behavioral change. And a couple of the mantras that we use here at CBS are, we're pretty blunt with employees these days. We're direct. We tell them, you are a target. It's not just the C-level employees or the people that handle the money. It should be everybody. Everybody, to some degree, probably comes across CPI type of data and or money. Money obviously can be monetized, and data we know can be monetized these days on the dark web as well. So we tell people, you are a target. Don't be our weakest link. I mean, you can't say it in any more plain English than that. And we're just trying to ingrain into everybody to think before you click. Seems easy, right? All right, so what types of activities would you undertake in a cybersecurity awareness program? Certainly, as we educate employees of the risks, again, we help tie everything back to why we're doing things rather than just say what you have to do. This is why we're doing it. This is why it's important. We pass all that information, at least we try to pass that all on to our employees. And again, we tell everybody, every organization and person is a target. There was a time where we thought, no, maybe Christian Brothers services flew below the radar screen. Well, what's a hacker want to do with a small organization in Romeoville, Illinois? Well, nobody flies below the radar anymore. Remember, that pair of copper wires that tied us all to the Internet is an express path for hackers to get into your building if they really, truly want to. So nobody flies below the radar anymore. It's a matter of ROI for hackers as well, unfortunately. I mean, if you were to call your big companies like banks who are under attack all day, every day, they see hackers log on at 9 a.m. and they log off at 5 p.m. It's their job. Whether they may be in a foreign country's military or just a nefarious organization, it's a job to a lot of people these days, and they're going to try to get into those organizations where they can get in by spending the least amount of time. So, more activities for a cybersecurity awareness program. Create awareness of those bad actors and the consequences. We want Christian Brothers Services to be around for another 60 years, so we have to do what we can to protect ourselves. So we inform our employees how to recognize threats and bad actors and teach them how to respond as well. We inform our employees of mistakes and experiences of other organizations so that we don't make the same mistakes. And that's how everybody would want it, right? If we're going to make mistakes, I much prefer it be something brand new that nobody else ever made before, so that we don't make the same one again. If we just keep making the same mistakes over and over, shame on us. So we stay in front of our employees regularly, even if we're just sharing the experiences of other organizations to raise the visibility. Inform employees how to practice safe computing to protect themselves. Talked about that. And, of course, I just mentioned this, stay in front of your people continually. In the old days being maybe just 3 years ago, security awareness, well, it wasn't probably called security awareness then, but it was annual security training. And that is not enough. Here at CBS, we like to stay in front of our employees 3 to 5 times a week in some way, shape, or form. An employee might be on their way to get coffee and they see a poster on the wall, or they may get a message from our online security awareness community to which all employees are mandatory members. It could be simple things like that, but security, everybody here at CBS should come across the term security or cybersecurity at least 3 times a week. All right, so how do you do this? Well, I just started to mention some of these various avenues. We conduct classroom training. That's what Lisa Matlock is here for today. She is our Education and Proficiency Coordinator. In fact, she coordinates our Cybersecurity Awareness program for all of our employees across all of our office locations. So she employs all of these various options. The classroom, the paper, sometimes you have to mix in paper because people can get numb to email or instant messages, posters, email, communities, online chats, social media within an organization to generate buzz and create dialogue. All of these methods are available to every organization. All right, so some tips as you employ all these activities through all of those various methods. I think some of these overriding factors apply. Everybody wants to engage their employees in a thoughtful manner. Again, not just say, thou shalt not do this, but tell them why. And, of course, as you have to explain it, everybody gets better. Anytime you have to teach anything, you get better at that. So engage your employees thoughtfully, certainly, but engage them. Strive for voluntary compliance. We overhauled our security awareness program here about 3 years ago this month. So 3 years has gone by. Is everybody perfect at it? No. And we have employees that leave or retire. We're hiring new employees on a continuous basis. So you'll never get to be perfect, but we can and must mitigate the risks that are, again, prudent, appropriate, and reasonable. So, but strive for voluntary compliance. This is not meant to be punitive. We don't want anybody to be paranoid about losing their job or what could happen to the point where they just freeze up and they forget how to type and they don't want to open any email messages any longer. So we strive to teach everybody to be always cautious, always alert, and always vigilant without being paranoid. The last thing we want is somebody to say, well, okay, well, fine. I can't click on any attachments. I can't click on any more links. I'm not going to do my job. Certainly we don't want that to happen. I've got some other slides in here that provide some additional information for you. So hopefully we can avoid scenarios like that. These are, I think I've got 7 or 8 security awareness tips here. Now these were actual security awareness tips that we used here at CBS that Lisa had created. And this was a series that was on paper. Maybe tip 1 appeared on everybody's desk one day. Tip 2 might have appeared the next week. So again, mixing in paper with various online. So if there's a piece of paper on somebody's desk or on their keyboard, they have to move it to get to their keyboard. If they're going to move it, hopefully they'll read it. So when we talk about security awareness and bad things that can happen, usually we're talking about primarily bad things that can happen via email. And when you're talking about that, that's phishing. Right? And there is a bad actor sending a fake email into your organization to try to create some urgency on the part of one or more of your employees to do something bad. And that might be like transferring a spreadsheet with Social Security numbers or a pile of W-2 information or simply a pile of money through a wire transfer from our bank account to somebody else's bank account. So bad things can happen via email, and that is phishing. And the tip on the right has to do with spear phishing. A lot of hackers, they take the time to do their research. They look at a company's LinkedIn profile and their Facebook profile and a variety of other sources, maybe trade shows they exhibit. They find out who the president is, the treasurer, the director of finance, and they might phish just one of those people or a group of managers or C-level people. So that's called spear phishing. They're taking the time to do their homework, to learn more about an organization so that they can attack it. So these are the kinds of things that we want to prevent. So here we are on tip number 3 and tip number 4. When a bad actor sends in a phish email or a spear phish email, really what they're trying to do is trick an employee or set of employees, and that's called social engineering. So we dive into the details here in our own security awareness program, and we would recommend that you do the same in your own organization. So the more information that employees are armed with, the better they are able to recognize bad things when they happen and respond in a better fashion than just clicking on a link or an attachment. Besides social engineering, we can't forget about physical security as well. It's easy to get wrapped up in security thinking about the cyber part of this, but our security tip 4 here has to do with physical security. We all work for a faith-based organization. Every one of our employees would easily hold the door open for somebody that showed up with their hands full of boxes. Oh, I'll let you in, without even thinking about it. So those types of tailgating incidents, of course, those are bad, and we have to teach our employees to recognize when somebody might be trying to get into the building, might be trying to blend in, and it might be trying to just look like an employee but without having their badge or other behaviors or things that a real employee would have. So physical security is important. Don't forget about it, even though we're always using the term cyber these days. And there's a lot of information in this PowerPoint. I wanted to put it all in here because you'll be able to download the PowerPoint. I don't want to read all these slides to you, but if I didn't put it in here, then you wouldn't have it to reread at a future date or pass it around your organization. Feel free to distribute this PowerPoint as widely as you see fit. All right, so thinking about the Security Awareness Program again, here's a couple of more tips. We were talking about email. When you click on a bad attachment or a bad URL, generally what's going to happen is bad software could be installed, and these days most likely the bad software will lock up an entire machine's contents, programs and data, and say, well, hold it for ransom. You have to pay in Bitcoins to get the password to have your computer unlocked. So ransomware is bad. That is a consequence of somebody clicking on a bad link or a bad attachment. Software could be installed very quickly, and an employee would never know what hit him and would never have had a chance. Of course, specifically for ransomware, you don't want to pay. You don't want to pay ransoms. That's bad. We've all seen in police-type situations where organizations and governments and cities don't want to pay the kidnapper because then they're just going to do it again. We're rewarding them, and that's not the behavior that we want to reward. So protect yourselves by making backups. Have your backups kept offline. So if a machine were to get infected and somebody clicked on something they shouldn't have, you just take that machine out of service quickly, unplug it from your network and the internet, and wipe it and reload it from scratch. So that's ransomware is a form of malware. So we're just going to keep on moving. This is an actual phishing alert poster or tip that we've also circulated around the organization. The interesting fact here I'm just going to call out, it said over 70% of social engineering and phishing scams are successful. In less than 3 hours, the bad guys can create a successful phishing scam and access the data that they want. It's pretty scary, and it's true. Attackers also like email because it is easy and low cost. It costs them nothing, whether they're going to do a spear phish to target a few employees or a larger one to target all the employees in an organization. In your Cybersecurity Awareness Program, here is a checklist of things you can do to relative to setting good passwords. And these days, passwords are generally not enough. We recommend to our employees that you make passphrases. Just because the minimum password length is 12 characters doesn't mean it has to be just 12 characters. Anything more than 12 characters is stronger. So we recommend phrases, 4 words with spaces in between them, something like along those lines. Here's a big number, and this was just in this week's Wall Street Journal. The most common password, according to an analysis of 5 million passwords that were leaked and found out there on the dark web by Splash Data here. They found that the password 123456 was still used, was the most commonly used password, followed by the word password. So all these times we hear it repeated to us over and over again, don't use these common passwords. It is still the case. Here's tip 8. When you've got too many passwords to remember, the point of this is use a password manager. A couple of years ago, we might not have said use a password manager because they weren't as secure as they could be. They get hacked too. It is true. But generally, your top password managers these days, while they're cloud-based, the data is encrypted once or double or even triple encrypted. So even if a bad guy hacks a password manager that's hosted at a cloud provider, they're getting encrypted data that would take them decades probably to unencrypt. So we do recommend here at CBS that every employee have a different password for every site that they go to, and that they use the password manager so that you only need to have the master vault password to get in, and your machine will help you remember those 30, 60, 90 sets of login credentials that you might have to get your. Here's just another poster on email security best practices, things to do not, and things to always do. I'll leave this with you as something you could read rather than go through all of this now. We've got 20 minutes left. Here is a slide on devices. Don't forget about your devices. We talked about Windows already, but we have iPads, we have iPhones, we have Android devices. There are a wide variety of devices that exist that we all use and our employees use to help get their job done. So we need to practice or get across good device hygiene to all of our employees as well. Things like, again, secure your devices. Set the policy on what you want to control the devices, just as you would a regular desktop computer or a laptop computer. So secure them first and foremost. We're teaching employees to think before you click. Well, here it's more like think before you app. So many apps are free these days or low cost at 99 cents. It's very easy for employees to download any app, and they're all not 100% on the up and up. Things like that. Wi-Fi hotspots. We teach our employees here to never use free Wi-Fi unless you're also using the VPN that comes along with the device or the laptop, because we do not deploy any mobile device here without a VPN. Never use free Wi-Fi that's not secure. And then just keeping machines clean. Guard in your apps. Just because you happen to have 200 apps on your iPhone doesn't mean you're using all 200 of those. You might have tried one 6 months ago, you didn't like it, get rid of it. You're done with the app, get rid of it, and also allow all of your apps to automatically update. That's the same for Windows, same for iPhones, iPads, any type of tablets or slates. Anytime you get an app, take the updates from the manufacturer, because a lot of times they're not only deploying new features, they're also deploying security fixes. So when you think about social engineering red flags, here is a chart. There's 7. So these are the 7 red flags that we teach our employees. When you get an email message, by the time you take in all 7 of these red flags, and if you ever reach the point where you're practicing safe computing all of the time without thinking about it, these 7 will be natural to you, right? They're still not natural to all employees. You have to think about it. And for those employees that might click on one of our test messages, you were to take that message, that fake email message that we use to test our own employees, and hold it right next to the social engineering red flags poster, then it becomes apparent to them after the fact. But this is what we try to keep this chart in front of employees all the time. Most likely when a bad message comes in, well, certainly it's going to have at least one of these red flags, but it could have all of them. From just teaching employees, they know what an internal email should look like from one employee to the next. So your typical to, your from, your date and subject could be off. It's a different time zone, for example, coming from a different country. That's why the date and the time are off. There's a variety of things here. So again, there's a lot on this slide that I'm going to leave you with. Another component of a cybersecurity awareness program, again, I just mentioned it, is testing. So we not only educate our employees, but we do also test, and not in a punitive manner like I mentioned earlier. We're looking for voluntary compliance. We're trying to arm our employees with the knowledge and the tools that they need to protect themselves, and then by extension, the organization and the members in our plans, programs, and services. But if anytime we're going to spend resources, time and money on something, we want to measure our effectiveness. So here we're using a service that we use to educate our employees every month on a topic. It could be a small topic from 3 minutes. It could be a longer topic for 15 minutes. And then there's online quizzes that go along with that as well. But then we also test our employees. We will use a service to create a phishing email or a spear phishing email. And our employees know we're going to do this at least once a month. They just don't know when, because it's not always at the same relative date, day, or time. But we do test. And sometimes we'll send easy ones like click here for your coupon for free Dunkin' Donuts Munchkins. They're on to us on those. But if we raise the difficulty level a little bit, or do a spear phish, or use some information that maybe CBS has made publicly available in the past, it gets a little bit harder, and the employees need to look more at those red flags, which of course is what we want. We want to be able to teach our employees how to repel those higher difficulty types of tests, which, of course, if you're going to fail, you'd much rather fail in a test in a controlled environment than to a real bad actor trying to steal our money or our data. So test and compare to your baseline month after month. So hopefully you're getting better, but don't ever think you can get down to zero. That will never happen just because of turnover, regular turnover in employees coming and going. But you have to mitigate the risk that you can mitigate. Repeat clickers. You will have a set of repeat clickers that could benefit by some further education and discussion about red flags, things that they might see on a regular basis. It happens. Again, the goal is not to be punitive, voluntary compliance. You can gauge the effectiveness of your program by the number of malware infections and viruses that have infected your computers, and how much did that cost you in terms of your IT operations team's time or a third-party consultant that you may use. So if we spend the time on the awareness program, we can prevent bad things and waste of resources on the back end. Another way you can gauge the effectiveness of your program is by your financial and IT reviews and audits. Are they coming back clean? Any management letters? And, of course, then if you have cyber liability insurance or other insurance-related costs relative to your IT environment, the better you are, the lower your insurance premium costs. So, taking stock. Some of us, we may live very far away from frameworks, methodologies, maturity models, and standards. Some of us on this call may not have to comply with any types of HIPAA laws or SEC laws or anything of the like. So that's good for you. And then some of us, we're in this world all day, every day. So small businesses, though, I want you to know, are at significant risk of cyber attacks. Data breaches can and do result in organizations going out of business. I think we all know what needs to be done. Maybe we just need a framework to help get started. In the end, though, every one of our organizations, we can only buy the technology that we can afford. We understand that. But again, if you look at your organization, the amount of resources, time and money that you have available, your risks, you can create a program that fits into your organization so that you're doing what's reasonable, appropriate, and prudent for an organization of your size and type. Cybersecurity policy and awareness programs are your best options to help prevent human-based cyber attacks. So I think I mentioned earlier when we were talking about ROI, hackers are looking for ROI. If it takes them more than 15 minutes, really, to break into an organization, they're going to get bored with it. They're going to get tired with it. They're not going to have any results for their 15 minutes. They're going to go find another organization. There will always be another organization that's easier to get into. Now, it is true, I believe, that if a bad actor really wants to get into any of our organizations, they're going to get in, especially if it's a nation-state sponsored attack. If they want in to CBS in Romeoville, they're going to get in. I'm really hoping that with all of the layers on our cybersecurity onion, that we're able to hold off an attacker for 30 to 60 minutes. Maybe we're better than that and we can get more, but I don't think anybody can say that their organization is foolproof and that nobody could ever get in. I would never, ever say that. If somebody wants them, they're going to get in. So think of the two friends walking through the woods and the bear shows up. Friend A does not have to outrun the bear. He only needs to outrun friend B. Of course, maybe at that point they're not friends, but the point being, while we're all in this together, none of us wants to be the low-hanging fruit because that is where the bad actor is going to go. They're going to go to the low-hanging fruit. So we just want to be steps ahead of the low-hanging fruit. We want to be medium or high-hanging fruit, I suppose. We want to stick with the fruit analogy. Now here, you may have noticed I reused 3 or 4 slides from the fall webinar, which was on IT risk versus reward. That was a webinar I co-presented with one of our CBS preferred vendors in our program called Stridium. Stridium offers a free mini risk assessment that will give you a good idea of where you are in terms of your cybersecurity risk. It's a form of a short series of simple yes or no questions. You may have, if you've attended the fall webinar, you may have already taken this. But if you haven't, it's a starting point combined with this PowerPoint presentation and this recorded webinar may help you to get off the ground. I will also take this time to promote our Outreach News magazine. And in fact, I was told by Matt here sitting next to me, the Outreach hit the U.S. mail yesterday. And I think it'll be on our website soon. And the third article on the cover here, I think, is one of our own on cybersecurity. So it's related to this same topic. So you could take today's webinar and then have an article that goes into some more detail as well. And then, if you're also going to happen to be at RCRI in the fall, I'm presenting there on this same topic. So you could see it. I try to pick a topic and get as much mileage as I can out of it, across webinars, in print, and speaking gigs. Just another reminder, please do find me and connect to me on LinkedIn. I'd be glad to connect with you and carry on a conversation at any time, not only at webinar time. And we will send you an invitation via email to join our IBM Connections community, which is on IT and security. So that, again, if you're interested, you can accept that email invitation. If not, just disregard it, please. But if you accept it, then you can post information and post questions and have here at CBS, we will respond to that, as well as others in the group may also choose to respond. And with that, here we go. We made it to the Q&A portion of the webinar.
Perfect. We'll now open up the floor for questions. And as a reminder, type your questions into the question box, which can be found to the left of the presentation window, and then just click Submit. If it's not available, click the purple Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen, and that will bring up the Q&A box for you. Our first question is maybe more for Lisa, but what tools are you using for phishing testing?
We've partnered with a company called KnowBefore that allows us to create our own templates, as well as KnowBefore provides some standard templates. So they basically will figure out what the main phishing emails are that are out there. We kind of take the teeth out of them and make a template for us that we can use. But we can also customize them. Tom had mentioned that we do spear phishing, so I will take a look at our social media pages and pull some information off there occasionally as well to make some. KnowBefore is what we use to actually fish our.
I might just add to that, thank you, Lisa, that the nice thing about KnowBefore, again, they've got a team of people that create content, and they also, it's continually updated, and they keep it relevant and timely. In fact, if there is something that maybe happens in the news today that, a lot of people are interested in learning more about, even if it's Prince Harry's newest baby, KnowBefore makes a template for that already. and then sends that to somebody. The odd thing is that even if it's sent as a blanket phishing email to all employees, maybe like we would say it's CNN News. Well, if you clicked on it and you don't even subscribe to CNN News, that would have been a red flag that shouldn't have been getting it in the first place. So if you weren't supposed to be getting it, you shouldn't have clicked on it.
Our next question, Tom, do you feel that Ethernet wire or hardwired computers are more secure than wireless connections?
No, I don't. You're connected to a network, whether it's through a wire or wireless, so no. Now, of course, that brings up some other issues. We already talked about Wi-Fi. Stay away from public Wi-Fi unless you always, as a matter of course and a rule, turn on your VPN and you know your traffic is always encrypted. If there's no available free public Wi-Fi, generally your iPhone or your Android phone might also be a hotspot. That is a much better, more secure option than free public Wi-Fi. But again, if you've got a VPN and you know how to use it, then you may have no other recourse than to use public Wi-Fi. But as it relates to a wire, that brings up an issue about ports, maybe jacks, IT jacks, data jacks within a company. We didn't talk about that at all today. Cyber seems to be the topic that's top of mind for everybody. But in terms of any organization, there is still the insider threat that you have to be aware of. So I might just say be aware of data ports and data jacks in a wall or in a table or wires laying around so that you know where they go. But in general, whether you're wired or wireless, you're connecting to a network that then you connect out to the internet. So I don't necessarily view wired as any more secure than wireless.
Thank you. Do you have a reference for a good place to get a sample cybersecurity standards or procedures?
We would be happy to share everything that we have with you. The couple of slides that I presented were just some random subset things to give you an idea, but we're happy to share. I can take your email address, and we're happy to share.
Perfect. We have time for one more question. How do you know you've achieved all your security goals and you can stop?
Hey, that's a good question. I would say that you will never, ever achieve all of your goals, and you can never, ever stop. I think I said it a couple of times already. We revamped our security awareness programs 3 years ago now, and while we did have intentions of getting down to, let's say, a 0% click rate, we realized that's never going to happen. Just based on pure organizational change, employees leaving, employees coming. Some of them may be coming from bigger organizations where they've gone through intense cybersecurity training. Some may be re-entering the workforce and have missed a few computer evolutions. Some, it's constant change, so you'll never reach the end. It's kind of like sometimes people think, well, I've reached the end of the internet. I'll start over. I can turn off my computer. You'll never reach the end. You just got to stay with it. You create something that's continuous. That's all.
All right. Well, thank you. And for more specific questions regarding what Christian Brothers Services is doing in the area of cybersecurity and how Christian Brothers Services might be able to assist you and your organization in these areas of information and technology, please contact Tom Drez using the information on the screen, as Tom has also made available the IBM Connections platform, which he will be emailing out to you later today. For more information regarding any programs or services offered by Christian Brothers Services as a whole, you can visit our website at cbservices.org, or for specific questions regarding our services, you can email us at info@cbservices.org. As a reminder, a downloadable copy of today's presentation can be found by clicking on the light green icon with a piece of paper on it at the bottom of the screen. We will also email the slides out to all the participants today as requested by several people on the webinar. This was the 9th webinar in our Spring 2019 webinar series. Please join us in 2 weeks on Thursday, May 23rd, for our next and final webinar of the Spring series entitled Medicare Secondary Payer Rules and You. To register for this webinar, please visit cbservices.org/webinars.php You can also visit the same page to view all of our webinars on demand. Once again, thank you to our speaker, Tom Drez, and as always, thanks to all of you for attending today's webinar.